Wish I knew what went wrong. Where did the love go? Nobody knows. Maybe I'll find it in a song.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Duncan Showroom. Here we are starting the far side of 8 p.m. sharp, closer to 8 o'clock than we've ever been. Wow, you guys are, and that's because you know where the address is. I don't know how you got 131 Government Street. Well, anyway, that's the way it happens. Sometimes things get confused. We never know that because we were here, so we knew where to go. Anyway, my name's Longevity John. We are broadcasting live tonight out to the wonderful YouTube world, which is kind of neat. That means you guys can go back to the show afterwards, remember all those wonderful moments, but make sure that you pass it on to all your friends so they know what they missed tonight by being in the room, and that the next time these guys are anywhere near them, that they will go show where they are and make sure they catch their show, because you think you're going to enjoy it. The Wardens. The name's kind of weird for me, the Wardens. Is that jail? No. Park Wardens. Yes, up in the, if you're up and around the Canmore area, up in that area, there's a thing called the Canmore Folk Festival. You ever heard of that one? It's an amazing festival. And just sitting in there looking at the mountains, you're just sort of in this little bowl surrounded by mountains. It's a wonderful thing. So no wonder the style of music that these guys have comes from them. It's got that sort of prairie feel, but without being all prairie, right? So got the mountains, kind of got that feel of what park wardens would talk about, I think. They've been together 10 years, which is pretty darn cool for any band to stay around that long. And I like the fact that they brought along this whole show with them. Wow. We have one of those screens too, so it's kind of neat to have another one in the venue. Tim's just getting all the cameras set up. Yeah, we have 4 cameras. We don't tell the audience. We don't tell the band where the cameras are either, right? They have to figure it out themselves. Anyway, there's a lot of great shows coming up that I want you to come back and see. I also want to draw attention to the fact that the arts needs to be subsidized. It really helps when we do have it subsidized. That's why you'll notice at the community center, all of their shows, CVRD runs that. The person who runs it gets a 6-figure budget or salary. There's a lot of people, a lot of money has to go into the arts to make it happen, is what I'm saying, right? So when we're a small venue like this, a small business, it's very difficult for us to keep it open. So when we have people like Marcia Todd, who's sitting here in the front, who has donated again $1,000 this month, $2,000 a month before, $2,000 a month before that, putting the money back into the community. Now, I'm not saying that just to get her some glory and all that. The one nice thing about it is that allows her to come to as many shows as she wants to come to. And she can bring a guest. Now, she has come to so many shows that she had no idea what she's coming to. But one of her claim to fame is she's 7 minutes from home when she leaves here after having a great night of entertainment. She has tried all our shows. And I tell you, she's fallen in love with each and every one of them. This is your second one today. There you go, see? And thanks for supper, by the way. Yeah, one of our special guests. That's why she gets a duck. You too can have a duck on your seat, not for $1,000, but any kind of donation that makes it help out. Basically, what I'm getting to is help support the arts. Thanks for coming out tonight and being part of the live audience, because that is what makes it actually work. The Wardens are sitting back there going, John, would you please shut up? We want to come out and entertain, and I'm going to let them do that. So let's give them a warm welcome, please. The Wardens.
Hello. Thank you. How's everybody doing this evening? Good. All right, nice to see you. Thanks for coming out.
Guitars can't take it.
Yeah.
They don't know humidity.
There used to be
Alberta
just
guitars.
dry as a stick, but you guys ready?
Ready.
Scott?
Yeah.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, Duncan. How's everybody doing tonight? All right. Oh. This just in, I'm getting a message from the control room. There are 7,600 people live streaming this as we speak, so we've got a huge audience here across the world. We're excited to be here. We are the Wardens. We're a trio, as you can see. And we're going to bring you some stories and some music here tonight from our lives and our experiences as National Park Wardens. We protect grizzly bears in the Rocky Mountain National Parks. We rescue stranded climbers. And one of the things we do like to do a lot is we patrol the backcountry on horseback. And this very first song sort of sums all that up. It's called Government Cowboy.
I can ride, I can roll back and jingle and pack, and I can tack a shoe on as a matter of fact. Head for the hills and ride for the gov, getting paid for doing something I really love. 'Cause I'm a government cowboy, loping down the trail, hoping to heck if I have a wreck, the brakes on my horse won't fail. Saddle up, boys, we're burning daylight here.
Look at the horse. I need a coffee.
Chopping logs, getting wood, drift, fencing to fix. You got a jug, buddy, I get the mix. We'll stay up all night, hell, we'll have a ball. God dang it, my head, we missed radio call. 'Cause I'm a government cowboy, loping down the trail, hoping to heck if I have a wreck, the brakes on my horse won't fail. Ooh, that black horse is looking mighty humpy this morning. Who's riding old midnight?
He is.
Well, you won't see us riding at the Calgary Stampede, Wikiska, Winoka, or Laramie. But we've been on a lot of 8-second rides, or just going around to testify. 'Cause I'm a government cowboy, loping down the trail, hoping to heck if I have a wreck, the brakes on my horse won't fail. Last verse. Still with us?
Are we there yet?
So you find the horses out of the chuck, Jamie's meeting soon with a trailer and truck. We're heading to town, our wallets are thin. We're hoping the girls got the timesheets in. I'm a government cowboy, loping down the trail, hoping to heck if I have a wreck, the brakes on my horse won't fail. Yes, we are government cowboys, loping down the trail, hoping to heck if we have a wreck, the brakes on a horse, brakes on a horse, brakes on our horse won't fail. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, government cowboys, that's what we were for over 30 years each, both Scott and I. And we started the Little Wardens band, about 10 years ago, John was saying. And we do about 40, 50 shows all over Western Canada every year, and nicely getting into the U.S. Now we've done some shows up in Alaska and all through the Pacific Northwest. We played up there, and 1 year ago we were down in Southern California doing some shows down in the San Diego area, and I never knew how long California was, because we had an invitation to go do some shows in Northern California as well, and we just said, we just can't do it. It's just too big of a state, but we're going back to Northern California in January 2020. We got some gigs there. One in particular I'm really looking forward to, little town called Red Bluff, California. We're playing for the Red Bluff Rodeo and Bull Sale. So that's going to be a good one for sure. Yeah.
So we like to introduce the guys throughout the show here. I'll start with introducing Scott, standing next to me here. I met him when I first started working as a dispatcher for the Warden Service back in 2001. That was the Banff, Yoho, and Kootenay Warden Service. Got to know him a little bit then. He was stationed in the backcountry then. He had the whole north end of Banff National Park all to himself, pretty much. I call him the Warden of the North sometimes. And
sounds like a Game of Thrones
it
kind of
thing. Kind of does, yeah.
It's like that, yeah.
And the way I communicated with him actually at the very beginning was on something called backcountry radio call. We talked about this last song here about traveling in the backcountry on horseback. A lot of the travel was alone, and as dispatchers we had to connect with them every morning and every evening for safety reasons. And so he was really just the voice on the other end of the radio until they sent him back to town to resupply. He would come back, he'd come into the office and sit down, and he would tell us some fascinating stories that just kind of blew my mind. And I realized then that the warden, the job of a national park warden it's a job, but it's as much a culture and a lifestyle as anything else. And a lot of the stories, that the rich tradition of storytelling comes from those original national park wardens who were cowboys from the foothills, who were just used to sitting around a campfire and telling a good story. So you're going to hear some great stories from Scott here tonight. He has spent 35 years protecting our national parks. Please welcome him, Scotty Ward.
Thank you. We're going to take you back in time a little bit here, back to about 1916, and this crusty old character named Bill Neesh. Now, Bill was actually an escaped prisoner from the United States who managed to sneak across the border into Saskatchewan. He joined the Canadian Army, signed up for World War I, went overseas, and he was a horse trainer and a sharpshooter during the war. When he came back from the war, things were still a little hot south of the border, so he joined the Northwest Mounted Police. No background checks much in those days. Anyway, but Bill did like to imbibe a little, so one day Bill had way too many drinks, and he rode his horse into the lobby of the Banff Springs Hotel wearing his Mountie red serge, and the next day he was looking for work. But don't worry, he got hired as a park warden right away. Now we jump ahead to 1935, and there's a big manhunt on in Canada for 3 young guys that had murdered 2 RCMP officers in Benito, Manitoba after a robbery. They escaped and nobody knew where they went, but Mrs. Straw in Canmore, who operated the service station, recognized their faces from the newspaper as they were gassing up and left the gas station headed west to Banff. So she got on the old 1935 crank phone and called the Banff detachment and said, these guys are heading towards Banff. They sent a car out to intercept. They met on the gravel road. The 2 policemen got out of the car, and these guys opened fire, and 2 more policemen were killed. So now these 3 guys, they just ran and hit the bush running and left their car on the highway. So that overnight happened. They couldn't go after them in the dark. It got really bad weather overnight. The next morning, they brought in a police dog, the first time a police dog had ever been used for in Canada. And so this dog was cast around and picked up the track, and with the dog handler and another policeman running behind, Bill Neesh was also in the posse. He's back in the scene now, carrying his Warden rifle. Off they go tracking behind the dog. They track, I think it's about 1 kilometer or so, and they come upon these guys, and they're lying behind some logs. These guys open fire on the posse. Bill calmly steps behind a tree, picks up his Warden issue rifle, shoots and kills 2 of them. So that day, Bill wrote in his park warden diary, he said, I patrolled to the east, I had a meeting with the chief warden, I fed the horses, and I killed 2 murderers. Well, the diaries went back to Ottawa, came back about a week later with a little note saying, more details, please. Bill's reply to Ottawa is the stuff of legend. Jump from a train in the driving rain, dragging that ball and chain. North across the border, escape law and order, starting his life again. Stumbled on into Saskatchewan, signed up for the war. Army assigned him to busting ponies on some foreign shore. This war vet donned the red surge of the Northwest Mounted Police, shipped him west to the Rockies, much to his relief. Here's to the man with the steady hand, fearless as they come. Eyes of a hawk, he walked the walk to the beat of his own drum. Banff, the manhunt's on October 35. For Mountie shot along the road, none of them survived. Fugitives fled into the bush, the police dog tracked them down. They opened fire on the posse, rolled up on the ground. Here's to the man with the steady hand, fearless as they come. Eyes of a hockey walk the walk to the beat of his own drum. Bill, he lined up rifle sights and took his careful aim. Ended the lives of 2 murderers, ended their deadly game. Bill, he wrote in his diary, rescued a climber today, patrolled the east, shot 2 thieves, fed the horses their hay. Ottawa needed more details, they needed more to tell. Bill replied with nonchalance, snowing to beat hell. Here's to the man with the steady hand, fearless as they come. Eyes of a hockey walk the walk to the beat of his own drum. Here's to the man with the steady hand, fearless as they come. Eyes of a hockey walk the walk to the beat of his own drum. Beat of his own drum. Beat of his own drum. Thank you.
The Ballad of Bill Neesh. We met Bill Neesh's granddaughter at a gig we were doing in Bragg Creek, Alberta, not that long ago. And did you see the picture of Bill Neesh with his gun there, and with his pants tucked into his cowboy boots with those spurs that he was wearing? Did you see that photo there? She said, "I have those spurs and I have that rifle." And I said, as respectfully as I could, you know, if there ever was a time that you might want to pass those along, we'd really be interested in having them in the band. And so I'm going to call her when I get back from this island tour to see where we're at with that. So
Because you're going to have a lot of extra money in your pocket, I think, after
oh
this
yeah,
tour, hey?
we're just filthy with it.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things I forgot to mention about Scott is that he actually, he was a park warden. He spent most of his career in Banff National Park, but he actually spent about 4 years as a park warden out in Pacific Rim National Park, just on the other side. We had a chance to play a show in Ucluelet about a week ago out in Yuki. It was a really fun show. Some of Scott's old friends were there, and so they came to the show, and we hung out afterwards and got to hear some great stories of what life was like on the wild side of the island back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And one of the things you guys talked about was the incredible salmon runs that you had seen in the early 80s.
Up Clackwood Sound in the early 80s, the salmon runs of Sockeye, Coho up in there were just phenomenal. Millions of fish. The bay was, well, they pooled it before they ran up the Kennedy River. They were still in salt water. You could still fish for them. It was about 2 kilometers across by about 10 kilometers long, this bay, and the whole thing was just alive with splashes of these salmon coming in.
And at that time, when Scott was telling that story, I was like, how is it that, like, and what happened to them? Because your friend, when you asked your friend Doug Palfrey, I think there, he said there's almost none left. Like, and he swims these rivers, he does all these studies, and he's still counting these fish. And he's like, because you asked him that, what's it like? And he's like, there's almost none left. And it's like, how is it possible that something in such abundance over 35, 40 years can, be down to nothing? And then Scott said to me, he looked at me and he said, well, look what happened to the buffalo. Across all of North America, in the early 1800s, from Mexico to Edmonton, as far east as North Carolina, as far west as the valleys and meadows of the Canadian Rockies, there were 30 million buffalo in the early 1800s. By the time Banff National Park was created in 1885, there were none left. They'd been picked off from many different sides, overhunted, obviously, and to the point where there were just none. There was nothing left except for one little herd of 500 down on the Flathead Reservation of Montana. And Howard Douglas, the first superintendent of Banff, he heard about this last herd, and he said, "I think Canada needs to be a part of keeping this great species from becoming extinct." See, the buffalo were, they fed, clothed, and housed the first people of those regions for 10,000 years, and within the space of a generation or two, almost vanished. And so Howard Douglas convinced the government to buy that last herd and bring them up to Canada, and they went for it. And they sent a bunch of cowboys down south. They rounded them up. They put them on boxcars at Ravalli, Montana, and they shipped them by rail up to a newly formed park just east of Lamont, Alberta, which we know today as Elk Island National Park. And if you go there today, you can still see the descendants of that last herd of buffalo, which is still to this day considered the purest form of plains bison anywhere in the world. And those descendants have been sent to various ranges, bison ranges and refuges all across North America to sort of help that regeneration process. Some were brought to Banff in the early days just sort of as a demonstration herd in an enclosure, but we never really saw buffalo back the way that they once were in Banff National Park. Until a couple of years ago, we started the process of bringing them back. We flew 16 pregnant females in these modified shipping containers deep into the backcountry of Banff. We had a little fenced enclosure in there. They landed them into there. They gave birth to a set of calves. They got used to their surroundings. Next spring, they gave birth to another set of calves. There were some bulls in the herd. And last July, we went up there and we swung those gates wide open, and we now have wild buffalo back in Canada's very first national park. This is the title track of our latest album. It's called Sleeping Buffalo. Wake up, sleeping buffalo, won't you come on home? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, feeling all alone. Time has passed since you last roamed, when the night was forced upon you. Bones rotting in the grass, now buried deep below. Dawn tiptoes through the dim light, kiss on your faint shadow. Might you shake and stir the soil and let your dust gently rise? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, won't you come on home? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, feeling all alone. Up well the springs and drink away. Fill these lands with kin. Dig deep inside forgotten grass. Heal the land once again. Dream is ours, a shaky one. Remember the dark past. It's not the arrows, lance, or horse that closed your eyes at last. Wake up, sleeping buffalo, won't you come on home? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, feeling all alone. Wake up this time Even if forever is no more, rise up and shine with the light. Walk through the open door. Wake up, sleeping buffalo, won't you come on home? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, dawn has come. Wake up, sleeping buffalo, won't you come on home? Wake up, sleeping buffalo, dawn has come. Wake up, sleeping buffalo, the sun is rising. Thank you.
The first show we ever did was at the, pardon me, at the Canmore Library 10 years ago. And, we were a trio. Ray played the electric bass back then. We did a show there, and a small but enthusiastic crowd. And you know, we were just started out, so we were a little not quite as polished and professional as you're seeing here this evening at the Duncan Showroom. The head librarian came up to us after our show, and he offered us a contract for $300. And gave us 4 days to get the money together. We've come a long way since then, I think. Huh? Thanks.
This, the park warden's job, of course, in our day was a multifunctional job. I'd like to acknowledge we have the park warden in the audience here tonight, Rob Walker. He lives near Brentwood Bay, that's right. Yeah, but we worked with Rob for many years. He was actually a fire specialist towards the end, so one of the jobs we had was fire and veg management, everything from prescribed burning to fighting wildfires. Other parts of the job were wildlife management, fisheries, law enforcement of park regulations, and then there was the public safety component, which was rescue work, mountain rescue, avalanche forecasting, avalanche control. So pretty multifunctional job. So I thought, well, I better write a song about firefighting. So of course, it's kind of apropos these last few years. There's been terrible fires, like right now, even in Northern California. This summer, Northern Alberta had a bad season. BC and Alberta in the south had a bit of a reprieve, but it's been terrible a few years before that. One of the biggest fires we had was in 2003 in Kootenai National Park, bordering right on Banff. I think, Rob, you were on that fire. And it started with a lightning strike on Mount Verondere and second strike up Tokum Creek, and both fires sort of united as one, and they were headed for Vermilion Pass. Now, if it had crested Vermilion Pass, it would have been pretty dicey, because if you're familiar with the Banff area at all, if you go over Highway 93 south to Radium from Castle Junction, that first big hump you go over is Vermilion Pass. So if the fire had got over that pass, it would have gotten into the Bow Valley, and it would have gone down the Bow Valley and probably done significant damage to Banff town site, maybe even carried on to Canmore, because that was the driest year we had in 100 years that year. So the fire bosses like Rob there were pretty desperate to stop this fire. They brought some big D9 cats in, which are used kind of rarely in parks firefighting. They brought these cats in, and they cut a big swath up Storm Mountain. And the idea was to light a backfire. So you wait till if you burn from the cut line towards the fire, you basically take away the fuel for the fire, and it controls the fire. So it's a big risk as the fire boss, though, because everything has to be right. You know, the wind has to be right, the fire has to be just the right distance, the relative humidity has to be perfect, everything has to be in your favor. And if you screw up and it gets behind you, now you're the guy that burned the town of Banff down. Not something that Rob really wanted on his resume. So, but they were successful, and it was a successful backfire, and it stopped that fire. And I don't think a lot of people in the Banff area realize how close they came that summer to losing it. And if it wasn't for Rob and all of the men and women working with him and underneath him there, could have been pretty bad. So I sent this song out to all the firefighters, all in the West in the last few years. Tonight I'll send it out especially to Rob. It's called Backfire. Lightning slapped a timberline on Mount Veronderay. Sparks dance in the evening, exploding in the heat of day. Sea of flames on a ridgetop, ancient timber set ablaze. Driest spell in 100 years, no rain for 40 days. And the winds fan her northward, up Vermilion Pass. Firefighters muster to a monumental task. Blinded by the smoke and ash, they fight to hold their ground. Back up, boy, she's hot as hell. This devil wears a crown. 40,000 acres smolder in her wake. Chainsaws and D9 cats carve a fire break. Gotta stop this wildfire, boy, before it's too late.
Valley, the Bow Valley,
Lies in her path.
valley, beautiful valley.
She'll be turning to ash. The second strike up Tokum Creek, the fire begins to spread. Fires unite in the wall of flame, embers leap ahead. Choppers work the hot spots, and sprinklers hold the line. Backfire meets a roaring heat in the nick of time.
Here's to unsung heroes.
Saved the town that day. Hadn't stopped her on the Great Divide, would have got away.
Wind blows down the Kootenai.
The thunder rolls. Heat will come, lightning strikes, and fire will take its toll.
40,000 acres smolder in her wake. Chainsaws and D9 cats carve a fire break.
Gotta stop this wildfire, boy, for it's too late. Gotta stop this wildfire,
For it's too late.
thank you.
That's Scott's song, Backfire.
Or I can introduce this character behind me here, Ray. Ray Schmidt, actually, he started working with my son Trevor at the East Park Gate. In fact, sometimes people think he's my son. I think it's something to do with our profile, right? But he's not. But he started working with Trevor at the
Thanks,
East Park
Dad.
Gate.
Thanks for clarifying that, Dad.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to own him. Anyways, but he worked his way into dispatch, and that's where I met him as a dispatcher. And then he was the fire crew, the trail crew. Then he was a social media guy for parks.
It's the new media specialist, is
Yeah.
what he was.
So that's really good for keeping our Facebook page going and our website.
Oh, yeah.
All those things you need. And now he's actually working as a park warden in Revelstoke Glacier National Parks in Rogers Pass. So he lives at the summit of Rogers Pass. And there's they have 30 feet of snow in Rogers Pass. He lives in the 3rd story of an apartment building that's about 10 or 12 other people living there. He told me that he could actually, if he wanted to, he could just snowshoe right out his front window in the wintertime.
Ray's a heck of a good fella. He's a young man, and he writes a beautiful song, which you're about to hear. Very valuable in the band. Scott just touched on it for a moment. He does all our social media, which is a huge component of the music business these days that we have definitely found out over the last 10 years. You just got to be linked into all of that. And Ray looks after all that. He's the road manager as well. I get the gigs, and then Ray
I order the pizza to the show just before the show. That's my
tends
job.
to all the
basically, yeah.
details, all the accommodation and travel and all that, and liaises with John on the particulars of the show. And he drives the van a lot, which is great for us. But I think where Ray, and I know the guys will agree with me on this, where Ray is most valuable to the Wardens is that he drives the average age of the band way down. And that's really important for a couple of guys like Scott and I. So here he is from Rogers Pass, British Columbia. How about a nice Duncan round of applause for our good friend Ray Schmidt there.
We actually do still have part of a large pizza in the back here that we did order. We kind of ran out of time today. I don't know how we ran out of time. We had tons of time. Yeah. We've been all over the place. We started in Arrington actually about a week ago. And, people look at our schedule and they're like, what are you guys, idiots? Like, for coming up with this schedule. We started in Arrington, went down to Sydney, went all the way back to Ucluelet. And then the other day we had this crazy day. We had a show on Bowen Island. And then we had to get from Bowen Island to Texada Island in one day. 4 ferries. And we got up at 7:30 in the morning. We got that first ferry out of Bowen Island, much to our fiddle player's chagrin, because he usually sleeps until about 11 a.m. Got to Horseshoe Bay, got, all good, got to the Sunshine Coast, no problem. Earl's Cove, is that, yeah, ferry. Got to Powell River, had a little bit of time to kill, so we just wandered around town. We thought, well, let's get a few little, supplies. Got all that way, got right through the ferry line, got her ticket, and she's like, it's looking pretty full today. I don't know if you'll get on. We made it all that way, and we were 5 minutes later to the ferry line than we were supposed to be, and we were going to miss our critical link. But Brad talked to the one gal there, and she said, you're lucky because today we've got we have a really good load officer who's going to really, work this as much as we can. They were loading all these cars. We were held back, and then at the last minute, they gave us the go-ahead. We were the last ones on that ferry when we made the show. It was incredibly stressful, let me tell you.
What was the name of the load
officer? The name
officer?
of the load officer, it was perfect. His name was Rocky.
Sure wedged us in there. I think our back wheels were hanging off.
Yeah, that's right. One of the places that I like to go to take the stress off me is a place right behind me here. It's a place called Scotch Camp Cabin. And, no matter how rough things can be at the office and, talk about stress, sometimes, it's not all perfect working for the government, I can tell you that.
Feed the beast.
Yeah, and, sometimes... you just you get out. It's really when you get out there in the backcountry that things kind of fall away, and when you get up, you have to get up early in the mornings to catch up the horses and bring them in to feed. And it's a place back here. It's called Scotch Camp, and when that sun comes up over the eastern edge of the Rockies, those peaks in the back there is the first mountains that you see coming from the east, and that sun pokes over, and you know that what you're doing is the right thing in protecting our national parks. And this song is all about that. It's called The Shining Mountains. The new day rises gently skies so clear. Wild geese fly blue highways, and the songbirds sing so dear. Guard this land forever, follow blazes from the past, drink the cold crystal waters, make time stand still at last. Good morning, shining mountains, your hills shine bright and true. We've lived to see this day now. Will we, when it's through? Coal is just a black rock. The richest trees grow. Silver's but a dewdrop, and the grizzly is our gold. Good morning, shining mountains, your hills shine bright and true. We've lived to see this day now. Will we, when it's through? Good morning. Good morning to you. We've lived to see this day now. Will we, when it's through? Good morning. Good morning to you. Thank you.
That's our friend Ray. There you go. Thank you. Okay. Where was it? Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm going to introduce Bradley now. He's grabbing his guitar. I also met him when I started dispatching about almost 20 years ago. Man, makes me feel kind of old. But I am still the youngest member in this trio here, so. Brad had a really nice mix of work back in those days, and it was 2 weeks in the backcountry and 2 weeks in what we call the front country. The backcountry was really nice. He was the Bryant Creek District Warden. So if you've ever hiked in or out of Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park, has anybody done that? All right, there's a few people here that have done that. It's a beautiful hike. You likely had lunch on the front porch of the Bryant Creek Warden cabin, especially if it was raining. You definitely did that. It's a beautiful cabin, and in one of the most beautiful parts of that south end of Banff National Park, and that was Brad's district for 2 weeks. Every other 2 weeks he was in there, and 2 weeks is kind of a nice thing because, that's about as long as fresh meat can last. You can freeze it hard, and after a week, it's starting to get pretty green. By the end of the 2 weeks, you're pretty much vegetarian. And then he comes back into town, do some laundry and get yourself
Reacquainted with your wife and two little girls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Remind them what your name is again, and then into the town work and the front country work, which is really dealing with all the wildlife issues. You've got a lot of people. If there's any bears in Banff, and I think many of you know this from driving through Banff, if there's any bears that come roadside in Banff, there's about 50 to 100 cars that stop right away. People jump out of their cars, they grab their phones, taking selfies with the bears, right? And as the warden, you have to get out there and decide whether you're going to try and push the people out of the way or you're going to try and push the bear out of the way. generally you have more success getting the people out of the way, generally. But it's pretty stressful work, and by the end of 2 weeks, you're ready to go back in the bush.
Well, I had some awesome success pushing the people away.
Then the bears, they'll just be where they want to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Brad has worked in all sorts of parks. He's worked in Terra Nova National Park. He's been up in some of the Arctic national parks out of Baffin Island, Kluane National Park in the Yukon. He even was the Broken Group Islands warden for a little while there on Pacific Rim
That
as
was
well.
one of the best gigs ever, I'll tell you. For a landlubber like me, that was really a thrill. Yeah.
We sent him to pasture about 3 years ago. He's retired now, not after he put in 30 years protecting our national parks. There he is, Mr. Bradley Bischoff.
I appreciate that, thank you. Yeah, I had a great career. I loved every minute of it, really working in the showcases of your country. My only regret, really, I wish I'd worn more sunscreen. But we didn't know what sunscreen was back then, really. Towards the end of it all, I was in the Banff Warden office. I bumped into a really good friend of mine. His name is Rick Smith. And Rick Smith is the manager of our horse ranch. We hired Rick in 2003, took over from me. And we bumped into each other at the coffee room, and he said, "Oh, there's Bradley Bischoff, the last cowboy in the outfit." And he just could have knocked me over with a feather. That really meant a lot to me. Rick is so well respected in Alberta as a horseman, and for him to say that was just lovely. And so I wrote that. I have a notebook in my breast pocket of my uniform shirt that we all carry. So I whipped that notebook out so fast. I wrote that little last cowboy in the outfit. Saved it for a rainy day. So here's a song. Hopefully it'll be on our next record. We're working on album number 4 right now, and hope to have it out by the summer. And yeah, last cowboy in the outfit. Hope you like it. My keys are on the desk. I handed back my shield. I had no idea how that was gonna feel. Turned in my uniform. I signed off on my gun. Then sort of drifted off into the setting sun. Rode out to the corral. Gave away most what I had to my compañero. He was with me good and bad. Traded for my saddle, returned the governor's tack. I sold my shoe and outfit. There's no use in looking back. It was a fine run in the glory days. High up in the mountains where the eagles play. Then I turned out my old horse after pulling all his shoes, switched his tail and loped away and left me with the blues. I walked back to the barn, hung his halter on a nail, the last cowboy in the outfit. I had ridden my last trail. It was a fine run in the glory days. High up in the mountains where the eagles play. Papers all got signed. It was my time to go. The ranger in's all over. Curtains closing on this show. Because the West we love, West we love. Because the West we love, West we love. Because the West we love. love is not that wild anymore. Because the West we love is not that wild anymore.
We're going to take a break, folks.
Thanks a
We'll be
lot,
back.
everyone.
We'll be back in about 15 minutes or so.
Thank you. Stick around. We play all our good songs in the second half. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Betcha. Okay, yeah. Here's all the good songs coming now. That's the instructions for the second half.
In bold print for old eyes.
72-point font. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is exactly.
When the lights go down, and you're this far from town, you can see. Well, it's black as a cat up there on the hat, and it can get pretty dark pulling into Flint's Park. In the eye of the storm, up at Fish Lakes, where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And it can get pretty bleak down on Isaac Creek. It's all growing dim at Little Heaven. Down from the summit, rolling into Scotch Camp, reading Sid and Marty by a kerosene lamp. And then the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see. When the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see where you belong. Well, it's been a long day, the sun's setting low, a couple more hours to get to Brazil. Staring out over the horses at dusk, I'll catch 'em in the morning, I've earned their trust. And then the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see. When the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see where you belong. It's the kind of a darkness that'll show you the light, alone with your thoughts in the middle of the night. This is a place that you're born to be, on a buckskin horse in the high country. Now Scott Duncan on the fiddle, ladies and gentlemen. Ursus Major, the Alpha Star, show you where you've been, tell you where you are. And Scorpius, Virgo, Pegasus too, standing on guard, watching for you. And then the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see. When the lights go down, you're this far from town, you can see. When the lights go down, and you're this far from town, you can see where you belong. Yeah. Thank you very much. Want to say hi to Debbie and Haley. That's my wife, Debbie, and Haley's our oldest daughter, and Lindsay's our youngest. I think they're all watching at home in Canmore. Now on YouTube, so there we go. Hey, hi, girls.
I think Decky's watching. Is Decky here? Decky somewhere. I think he's watching here too.
Yeah, our buddy.
He's a little guy. He's our little buddy. He's actually the reason that we have a children's book. He's one of our biggest fans, and I think he's a young lad, and he's a cowboy out in down near Claire's home. Or no, not
Carstairs.
Carstairs, that's what it is. A lot of C's out there. and so his mom, she called us up one day and said, "Hey, do you want to? Can we take one of your songs and turn it into a children's book?" So we've been working a lot. We spent about the last year working on this book, and we're so proud of it. It's called Rocky Mountain Rangers, Guardians of the Wild. And the very first song we played tonight, Government Cowboy, has been adapted. The words have been adapted into a children's book. And, of course, we had to change some of the lyrics because you've got the jug, buddy, I've got the mix. Not so good for a children's book. So we sort of simplified it a little bit. But we've got some copies here and along with some other stuff. So just a huge shout-out to Decky out there and Red Barn Books. They're watching from the Red Barn tonight. So this is pretty cool. You're all here and they're all out in the world. Pretty neat. I think this is one of the first times we've ever live streamed.
I think so.
It's kind of nerve-wracking.
I didn't think about it till now. Thanks. All right, this song I wrote is for a friend of ours who just passed away in the last year. He was a park warden in Banff who was a mountain rescue specialist. And he actually grew up here on the West Coast, put up some of the early roots on the Squamish Chief back in the early 60s. He did some climbing down on El Cap in Yosemite. He was one of the first guys hired as a park warden because he was a mountain guide and he needed some more mountain rescue expertise. Pretty illustrious career. He survived the longest fall in North American mountaineering accident history. He fell over 2,500 feet down Mount Logan in the Yukon and survived. It's the only time I've ever heard of an avalanche saving somebody's life. He slipped off a knife ridge and dragged another warden with him off there named Peter. And in the first bowl, they triggered this avalanche and it cushioned their blows as they went over these 50-foot cliffs down to the bottom. And there must have been a pretty good run out at the bottom rather than a giant cliff. Because Peter was on the surface, his knee was shattered, but he couldn't find Tim. He did a surface search through all the pain of the shattered knee and saw one boot heel sticking up. Managed to dig Tim out, save his life. He said he was blue and he got him out, but he got him breathing right away and all was good. The helicopter made it in there. They had one of the early sat phones. But I guess when the helicopter just barely made it in there, the weather clagged in and it was clagged in for a week. They wouldn't have got him out. They all both required hospitalization, so they were lucky there. So Tim just got back to Banff that summer and was kind of relaxing and feeling good about being alive. And we were live trapping some grizzly bears because there had been some grizzly bear maulings right on the edge of town in 1980. And we had to get DNA samples from bears and try and piece together what was going on, which bear was doing this stuff. So we set some leg hold snares up at an old dump site. And that's just a piece of wire that goes around the wrist. It's just like a noose. It doesn't hurt the bear, but he can't get his wrist away. And it's back at the other side is usually tied to a tree. So 3 wardens went up in the morning to check the snare, and sure enough, there was a grizzly in there, and he was one mad grizzly bear. He dug a great big trench all the way around the tree. All that was sticking up was his ears. And he ripped all the bark off the tree. And so they called down to the office and said, somebody down there bring the tranquilizing rifle and the kit up. So Tim was the only one in the office. Tim's not a wildlife warden. He was like a mountain rescue warden, but he sort of knew where the stuff was, so he brought it up there. And they mixed up the dart, and they handed Tim the dart gun and said, all right, you go over there and shoot that dart in that bear because we got the high-powered rifles and we'll back you up. So Tim goes over nervously and gets about 20 feet away, 30 feet away from the bear. But unbeknownst to all of them, this bear had been chewing on the snare all night. And the bear charged one last time, and the snap went the cable, and the bear came right at Tim. So Tim, being the consummate hunter he was, threw the rifle down and ran for the truck. But unfortunately, he might have made it if he hadn't tripped and fallen. And this bear was going so fast coming after him, it went right by him the first time. As it went by, it took a swipe at him and ripped the shirt right off his back and put some claw marks on his back. It turned around to come back at him, and the other guys had to all shoot, and the bear just about landed on top of Tim. So after Tim, did his laundry from that one, he went on to have a very illustrious career as a mountain rescue specialist. Saved, hundreds of lives over his 30-year span of his career, and thousands of rescues. He was my direct supervisor for 17 years. So his name was Tim Odger, and this song is for him. On the west coast, in the land of sea and mountains, eyes would gaze so longingly at the towering peaks above. Cut his teeth on the Squamish chief, put up roots upon that peak, eased his way up granite faces, climbing was his love. California beckoned him, the big walls of El Capitan called him from his motherland to scale their lofty heights. He was living on adrenaline, arrow cracks and ledges thin, hammocks strung from pitons was the way he spent his nights. And the legend grows, 1,000 rescues come and gone, that's how the story goes, and no one knows how many times he's risked his life and limb. Legend of the warden known as Tim. Eastward to the Rockies, Lake O'Hara called to him. He hired on as a climber to rescue stranded souls. A warden and a mountain guide, traversing high on mountain rim, his hippie from the west coast and his vertical patrol. Decades now have slipped on by since he moved on down to Banff to try to save the weekend climbers and the young kids from the east. He studied snow, dug many pits, blew those snowy slopes to bits. When he got some good releases was when he were released. And the legend grows, 1,000 rescues come and gone, that's how the story goes. No one knows how many times he's risked his life and limb. Legend of the warden known as Tim. Climbed some man-made monuments like a bridge called the Golden Gate on a foggy, moonless night. Scaled the mountains in Nepal, Cogan had a screaming fall. A grizzly shot right off his back gave Tim a mighty fright. Say a cat has just 9 lives, Tim had 10 and still survived. He's up there climbing mountains, wisdom is his trade. Running big leads up a wall, ice tools on a waterfall, born to be a leader, that was Jimmy's fate. And the legend grows, 1,000 rescues come and gone, that's how the story goes. No one knows how many times he's risked his life and limb. How many times he's risked his life and limb. How many times? Thank you.
Everybody enjoying the show so far tonight?
That's good. That's good, because we didn't get dressed up for nothing.
Live streamers, I hope you're getting your money's worth tonight. Oh, it's great. We've got some young folks in the audience tonight. I like that. Thanks for coming out. You got to stay up pretty late tonight. Normal. He's like, it's normal. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a holiday tomorrow. That's right. Remembrance Day. I could not believe it today. We went for coffee, and they're already out doing Christmas stuff already. I thought like November 11th was like the sacred line. You do not start.
I started before Halloween.
Oh, man.
What is this world coming to? What's your thing about Christmas there, Brad?
I think Christmas should be like the Olympics. Once every 4 years in a country really far away. You got me on that one there? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
One of the guys I was lucky enough to work with in my career was a real mountain man. And I mean, these guys are real mountain men too, of course, but this guy was like really, one of those guys that didn't speak very often. And when he spoke very softly, and you just had to lean in. And you wanted to lean in, and you wanted to hear every word he said, because every word had some real nugget of wisdom in it. And his name was Frank Bergstrom, and he's a good friend of all of ours. And he was his father was a national park warden. They were up in Jasper, so he grew up in a cabin just outside Jasper. His grandfather was also a warden, so I mean he's got warden blood in him really. And he used to when I traveled with him in the backcountry, and all of us traveled with him. He used to make these things called these feather sticks in the cabin. Do you ever see one of those feather sticks that Frank Bergstrom made? I mean, those things were works of art. And really, what they were was just these pieces of kindling that you'd shave with your pocket knife, and you'd shave them thin enough that the wood would start curling up on the kindling. You'd keep that curled wood on there, and just keep going. And he'd do that 40 or 50 times and get these beautiful flower-like arrangements.
Feather-like arrangements.
Feather, yes, hence feather stick. And the idea was, though, this wasn't supposed to be a work of art. This is something you come into the cabin after a cold day and you stick it in the fire and you light it, and it just starts the fire going right away. But none of us could do it, and so we never wanted to use his feather sticks, right, Brad? I mean, it was like...
Yeah, that's true. And the way that it works, when you leave a cabin, you make your own feather sticks and replenish the supply, so when the next person comes in, wants a fire, boom, you can get him. But like Ray said, nobody could make him as good as Frank. So we used to walk in there and take these feather sticks and then take them off the stove and place them on the bookshelf or something, and don't touch them, And then we get our knife and hack away and slash and make these nowhere near what Frank could do. Then when we left the cabin, we take these other ones, put them back right there. And one of our friends, his name is Dale Lowen, long since retired now. He's always a practical joker. He took his pen and wrote on Frank's feather sticks, "For display purposes only." Yeah, but Frank was the real deal, and he's so handy, and it just never struck me how natural it was, the way that Frank handled his tools. Like, I'm not a very handy guy at all, but it just struck me, in any hand tool that Frank had, it just seemed to be an extension of himself, and he was, it's hard to describe, but he's something else.
And for us, we go out in the backcountry, and when we're finished our shift, our 10 days or 14 days or whatever, we're coming home. But for Frank, it was exactly the opposite. When he was heading out into the backcountry, he was coming home. My home is a cabin made up of tall trees, where the wood fires burn and the smoke's in the breeze. When I get lonely for my mountains once again, well, I'll gather all my things and set to go back in. There's no turning back to the TV and the car, 'cause I'm feeling too far from Mama's old guitar. Pack them boxes, saddle up the chestnut mare. Time to start the long journey and breathe the frosty air. I'm coming home to the hills that fill my dreams, to the valleys that I've seen. I'm coming home where my life is stars, they shine so bright, I'm coming home. When the willows brush my boots, that's when the earth begins to speak. There's Daddy's old stories, they're flowing from the creek. I see Grandma's face in the nutty pine tree. I can smell her sweet pitch as she rocks me to sleep. The sun is my clock, I see the moon where spacemen stood. But it's all that I need is a blanket in these woods, a knife to peel the kindling, making feathers from the trees helps the water get real warm and boils up memories home. I'm coming home. I'm coming back to you, my friend. Home. I'm coming home. I'm coming back until the end. I'm coming home to the hills that fill my dreams, to the valleys that I've seen. I'm coming home where my life is always right and the stars they shine so bright. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Thank you. Coming home.
Isn't that a pretty song? My word. Thank you.
That cabin in there, we were talking about the Bryant Creek cabin. That was the one where you left your tea bag when you hiked through there and had lunch there.
We played legions and community halls, conquering the West, one church basement at a time. As well, played some nice theaters. We had a nice show.
Well,
in
yeah,
the-
last night actually we were playing in Port Alberni, and we played not in the church basement, but in the church itself.
Yeah,
So we're moving up in the world.
that's
here.
right. And we slept in the basement.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we do some nice theaters. And we were at the Mary Winspear in Sydney. That was pretty nice. We like to play seniors, residents. I've never played for a more appreciative crowd than the seniors. They just love what we do. And sometimes we even go into hospitals. There's a friend of ours was feeling a little bit under the weather just before we came out here. We had some new songs that we were trying to work up, and we said, well, let's go in the hospital room, and we'll haul our stuff right in his room, and we'll play a couple of songs for him and see what he thinks. So we hauled our gear in there. We did a couple of songs that we were working on, and of course on the way out, we said, we sure hope you get better, and he looked at us and said, I hope you get better too. So that's a true friend.
Actually, if truth be known, that was me. I was in the hospital. And they didn't come back to see me after that. This song's about a young warden that was traveling solo by himself in the backcountry and had a bad accident with his horse. Now, we had 6 wardens killed in the line of duty during my career span between Banff and Jasper. When you think of all the different jobs, you know, firefighting and working with grizzly bears and traveling solo with horses in remote areas, mountain rescue, avalanche control. You know, accidents will happen no matter how careful we are. This young warden was 1978. He was traveling solo in the backcountry in the upper Red Deer River, staying in a little cabin called Sand Hills. He left his pack horses in the corral. He went for a day ride. He missed his 2 radio calls. If you miss your 2 radio calls, they send a helicopter to look for you. The next morning, the next afternoon, I think it took, they find him. They found him, unfortunately, deceased. He was lying up against a tree. His horse had gone back to the cabin to be with the other horses. The saddle was lying on the trail a ways up. The cinch was undone, so it looked like he'd been adjusting his saddle, and the flies were really bad. Somehow he got in a wreck. He got kicked, bled internally, made it down the trail a short distance, knew he was going to pass away. Wrote a really touching letter to his wife, his girlfriend, and his parents. And his name is Neil Cogan, and that's the title of this song. He was only 26 years old when he passed away. West of Yahatinda, east of Lake Louise, there's a cabin sitting on the red, nestled in the trees. District warden's line shack, good for a one-night stand. Wardens call it Sand Hills, wild and lonesome land. Had to learn the ropes, assigned to ride the backcountry, young and full of hope. Left the Sand Hills cabin, head for Douglas Lake. Only took his saddle horse, had some miles to make. Bells in the Sand Hills pasture, hooves on a rocky trail, creaking sound of a saddle, the swish of a horse's tail. His presence in this valley, spirits on patrol, dark clouds over Douglas Peak, hear the thunder roll. Fix his saddle high on Douglas Creek, did the cinch from the latigo, curse the flies and heat. What happened next we'll never know. Old Gunner came unglued, kicked him swift and kicked him hard, a fatal blow ensued. Bells in the Sand Hills pasture, hooves on a rocky trail, creaking sound of a saddle, swish of a horse's tail. His presence in this valley, spirits on patrol, dark clouds over Douglas Peak, hear the thunder. His best to walk a spell, lay down by the trail, wrote a letter to his folks, told them of his tale. Couldn't pick a finer place to say my last goodbye. I feel these Rockies in my heart, I feel my spirit rise. Bells in the Sand Hills pasture, hooves on a rocky trail, creaking sound of a saddle, the swish of a horse's tail. presence in this valley, spirits on patrol. Dark clouds over Douglas Peak, hear the thunder roll. Dark clouds over Douglas Peak, hear the thunder roll. Thank you.
We've had one day of rain in over a week here on the island and the Sunshine Coast. That seems pretty normal to me for this time of year. Pretty awesome. I have, we'll switch spots here. Okay. So I live in Rogers Pass, as they were talking about, and Rogers Pass, we don't really get rain there. It's in the summers, it's really dry. And as soon as summer's over, winter starts. It's just like a switch. Like, you know, you get a couple weeks of rain and then all of a sudden it's just snow. And the snow just keeps piling up and piling up and piling up. It's an incredible place, and I've spent a couple of winters out there, and it's just, the snow just keeps coming. And I guess there's 30 feet at Rogers Pass. I get about roughly 30 feet a year. But up higher, you can get up to 50 feet. And it's hard to even imagine that much snow. And I think people don't even really believe that it happens. But it happens. And it's, you know, we drive through that Rogers Pass. It's not the most fun place to drive through in the wintertime. But what we don't realize, I think a lot of us when we drive through, is it's an incredibly dangerous stretch of road to drive. Not just for the road surface conditions, but there's over 160 avalanche paths that threaten the highway. And what we do as park wardens, and what we've all sort of done over the years, I don't know, Rob, if you ever did a stint out at Rogers Pass in the winter, no. But many of the wardens, especially in the past, had to go through that system in the winter. But so we'll go through there, we'll go in there, we'll ski up to the start zones, way up in the top to the start zones of these avalanche paths, and we'll take a bunch of snow profile measurements and temperature and humidity and all that kind of thing, and just crunch a bunch of numbers and try and figure out the exact time when those avalanches are ready to come down. And then in the wintertime, we have the Army, that's actually the Canadian Army, that's living right up at Rogers Pass. And when it's time, we close the highway down, we bring the Army in, and they shoot their howitzer guns where we direct them in these start zones, and they bring the avalanches down preemptively. And then the highways crews, they clean up the debris, any debris that hits the road. And it's a really exciting program. And then when we open the highway, you know, people complain that the highway's closed, but we're really doing it for safety reasons. And sometimes it's snowing so hard that we start at one end of the park, we work our way all the way over to the other end of the park, and it's snowing so hard the avalanches start coming down again, so we got to start over again. So it's a huge undertaking. I think they call it one of the biggest road avalanche programs in the world. So, you know, next time you drive through there, don't take it quite for granted and have a look at all those avalanche paths up there. And so we thought for this song, incidentally, actually, the railway used to go through there, and when the railway was going through, they lost hundreds of men when the avalanches crashed into the trains. So it's a fascinating place, and we thought we'd just let you sit back and enjoy this tune that I wrote here for. It's called, it's the Selkirk Mountains, is the Rogers Pass, and we call this the Selkirk Snows.
you very much, everyone. Well, we dragged them all the way out here from Calgary. Scott plays with us whenever he can. He's a very busy musician. He plays with a number of different projects in and around the Calgary area, but we got him most of the time. He plays with John Ward Hannum regularly, and whenever he's not hooked up with John, we like to snatch him up and get him out on this on a tour wherever we are. But we had to go all the way to Kansas City, Missouri, to find Scott Duncan. We were performing at a folk conference down there called Folk Alliance, where select acts from all across Alberta were invited to perform in the Alberta Room. And then a number of presenters come to the Alberta Room during the weekend, like John, and see all the performers from Alberta, and then they might, book you for their venue down the road and such. And Scott was the house fiddler in the Alberta Room. And as soon as we came in there, we hooked up with John and went through with Scott, and went through a few fiddle songs, and we knew that we need to have this young man in the band.
Scott comes from a great fiddling pedigree, as we like to say.
Oh, yes.
His grandfather is the last remaining member of the Maple Creek Fiddlers. And he's still going strong. Do you want to talk a little bit about your grandpa there?
Yeah, sure. I love talking about him. Yeah, Herbert Duncan is his name. He's not really playing anymore. He's complaining his arm hurts too much to play, but we'll be going down for his 105th birthday in a couple weeks. So he's had a pretty good career anyway. So
if there ever was a fountain of youth, I think the fiddle
I
is...
hope that's it.
Yeah. So why don't you play us one that you and Grandpa?
Yeah, cool. All right, let's do that. Yeah, as a kid, I would go and hang out with Grandpa, get to go into the Cypress Hills Park, and play for the old time dances and stuff like that. Boy, I have great memories of that. Yeah, so here's one. Yeah, there's a little bit of room there. If you need to two-step during this one, I'll understand for sure. This is one I always play with Grandpa. I was just gonna send it out to him, but it sounds like he's gone already. He's not, but this is for you, Grandpa.
Maybe he's live streaming it at 105.
Yeah.
You never know, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's all over he's all over Facebook. Oh shit. No, anyway, yeah. So this one's called Red Wing. 1, 2, 1.
Duncan, everyone. Where else are you going to hear that? Where are you going to hear fiddle tunes like that? Except here at the Duncan Showroom.
That's right. Live to the world, really.
That's
Actually,
awesome.
Anywhere in the world right now, you can hear that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Duncan
there we
and
go.
Duncan, that's right.
It's my town.
It's your showroom, in fact.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, folks, we're just about at the end of the line here. I think we're running out of bandwidth. It's going crazy out there. So I think we got one more for you.
Yeah.
And I just really want to thank you all for showing up tonight, and you for staying up so late. You're still going strong. I like that. I like that. We really appreciate you all coming, and we want to thank Tim for doing sound. If it's sounding good out there, Tim's the man. Thank you. And Longevity John, he was great to work with. He's a man of few words on email, but his message is very crisp and very clear, and it was perfect. I mean, it's just no BS. Just book the band you're in.
That's right.
Get in here.
No contract, nothing like that. Handshake over the phone.
Yeah, that's our style.
our
So
style.
thank you. You've got a
That's
beautiful
our style.
place here,
Yeah.
and all those of you that are watching out there, please. Anytime you're in Duncan, I think there's a show almost every night, probably 2 a day sometimes. Please come down and check this place out. We posted a little video of what it's like in here. This is a cool place, and it must be experienced. There's a smell in the air here that is just fantastic too when you walk in. So we can't translate that really over the airwaves. It's a beautiful thing.
You have to
truly.
experience it yourself.
Yeah,
really.
that's right. So
Yeah, all right.
we've got to go pretty quick here because we got a couple of slices of pizza that need eating in the back here.
All right, good segue to the song, Ray. Here's our only food song, ladies and gentlemen. It's called Supper on the Trail. And it's about menu planning in the backcountry these days. It's a little bit different than when Scott and I went through as park wardens. And the way that it worked back then, I'd say, Scott, you look after the horses. Those are my 3 out there. Catch them up, and I'll meet you in 2 hours. I'll come back to the barn. I'll buy the groceries. Meet me in 2 hours here at the barn. And we'll saddle the horses. We'll pack our pack boxes, put the pack boxes in the back of the truck, get the horses saddled up, put them in the horse trailer, hook up, and then we'll go. And on the way out, we'll radio Ray and say, we're going to be in the bush for the next 10 days. We'll be at Scotch Camp tonight. We'll be on the radio. Don't worry, all will be good. We'll give you a shout when we get there. Truly, that's how easy it was. Nowadays, a little bit different out there with the young people coming on board. So talented and educated, lots of masters, some PhDs in the organization now. A little bit different. Scott and I, we went to Lethbridge Community College. LCC was Last Chance College is what we called it. And that joke just keeps on giving. Every time they thank you for that. That's great. So now, and maybe you can help me with this. And when I was growing up and looking at the mean age of our audience here this evening, I'm happy to have a plate of food in front of you, and you didn't leave the table till it was done, But no, this is just a song, all right? Not trying to make anybody mad here, please. So maybe you can help me with his dietary requirements. Where have they come from nowadays, where we have vegans and vegetarians and lactose intolerant and a whole bunch of other things, gluten-free, grande breve latte, macchiato, carmelito, whatever, it's all kind of funny. So this song is called Supper on the Trail, and thanks again to everybody for coming out tonight to the Duncan Showroom. It's been our pleasure to play for you. Antioxidants, omega-3s. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. There's couscous in the cupboard at Indian Head, lentils, chickpeas, artisan bread, whole wheat flour, it's gluten-free, and extra virgin. Can you explain that to me? There's sun-dried tomatoes, quinoa, of course, bags of granola,
Fed it to my horse.
from research scientists and volunteers, and undergrad students coming out your ears. There's antioxidants, omega-3, supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. Antioxidants, omega-3, the supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. There's echinacea and whatever. Pass the butter if it's all the same. There's antioxidants, omega-3. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. Antioxidants, omega-3. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. Scott, saw one more, wouldn't you? Give me a steak and potato and a can of corn. Pancakes and bacon will get you round the horn. Cowboy coffee
And a couple toothpicks.
Turkey in your saddlebag will do the trick. It's an Alberta thing. There's antioxidants, omega-3. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. Antioxidants, omega-3. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. There's antioxidants, omega-3. Supper on the trail ain't what it used to be. Yeah! Thanks a million, Duncan. Great audience, really enjoyed it. Hope you liked the show. Come and see us over at the merch table after.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Come on in
you.
here, Duncan.
All right, we'll give you one more.
You're too easy, Scott.
Yacht into bound, all right.
Well, thank you again, and we're just getting that much hungrier, so please don't ask for another one. I'll introduce the guys here one more time. We are off to Victoria tomorrow for a house concert, and then we're up to Port McNeill in a couple of days. Port McNeill, then we head over to the Sunshine Coast again, Powell River and Quadra Island to finish off our tour. So we're getting a real flavor of the West Coast here, and we're just loving every minute of it. And we will we'll definitely cherish this time here at the Duncan Showroom. On the fiddle over there, he's 97 years old, Scott Duncan. Right next to him with the toothpick in his mouth, put in 30 years protecting these great and beautiful showcases of our nation that we have that we call national parks. Mr. Bradley Bischoff.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And the man right next to me, he's our tribal elder.
Tribal
we love
elder.
him. He is he's the life of the outfit here. Scotty Ward.
Thank you. I'm still slugging it out, working in our national parks.
Somebody's got
Ray
to
Schmidt.
do it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, here's a song about our national parks horse ranch. It's called the Yahatinda. Yahatinda in Stoney language means mountain prairie. It's a beautiful fescue grass ranch surrounded by the Canadian Rockies. You can get to it from Sundre, Alberta. It's 100 kilometers west through the foothills, through a narrow gap in the mountains. Then it opens up into this big, vast plain of grass and mountains on the banks of the Red Deer River. When you ride west from the ranch, you're virtually riding into the north end of Banff National Park, the wilderness. There's no trails, there's no roads west of the ranch. They run about 100 head of horses for backcountry patrol purposes for park staff, and they train them, they overwinter them there. So when the horse season's done, usually about this time of year in November, instead of trailering our horses all the way around and coming in from the province, quite often we just ride them back. It's a 3-day ride up the Cascade Trail.
2 nights, 3 days.
Yeah, the horses are stepping out. They're
You know-
happy to be heading back.
So true. The second, we stay at Windy the first night, then we stay at Scotch Camp the next night. And we get to Scotch Camp in the dark. And there's some pretty steep trails heading into Scotch Camp going down Snow Creek Summit. And it's dark, and you ever ride a horse in the dark? Just push on the reins and let the horse have his head. And she'll get you where you need to go. And it's really quite something.
And the Scotch tastes good at Scotch Camp.
Oh, yeah.
So this song captures the ambience of that last ride of the year. It's cold, it's snowy. We're Yahatinda bound. I'm sending this out to my daughter Janet here, who's here tonight. lives in Victoria, abandoned the mountains on us. There's a place on the eastern slope in the mountains dear. It's a place of rolling grass where the Red Deer River sweeps. Riding north into that land where silence can be found. Riding north, I'm Yahatinda bound. Canada, the great white north, bitter cold descent. Alpine passes choked with snow that Mother Nature sent. Bitter wind down valleys steep chills me to the bone. Riding north, I'm Yahatinda bound. These ponies, they deserve a rest. Been going hard since June. Step out, son, it's not far now. We're gonna be there soon. These horses tend to slip and slide, they skid on frozen ground. Riding north, I'm Yahatinda bound. Prior rifle pull their shoes, turn 'em out on grass. They will lope out through the gate, they are free at last. When heavy snows obscure the ground, they'll feed on bales round. Riding north, I'm Yahatinda bound. I see the ranch past Wardens Rock, as vistas open wide. My pace picks up, this is the end of a long and cold hard ride. Spring arrives, we'll chase 'em in and trail them into town. After 6 months' work, they'll be Yahatinda bound. When I'm old and crippled up, can no longer ride, I will sit out on my porch, remember those vistas wide. When it's time to bury me beneath the cold hard ground, in my mind I'll be Yahatinda bound. In
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, everybody out there.
We'll see you down the road.
In the greater world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a million.